Grandfather made me a special gold pocket watch worth over $45,000, but my sister stole it after he died, and sold it to her boyfriend's dad. So I'm taking them both to court to get it back. My grandfather was a master watchmaker who owned a small shop for 45 years. His most prized possession was a custom pocket watch he designed himself. It's gold with intricate engravings and has been featured in several horology magazines. The watch has a unique double case design with our family crest engraved on the inner case, and the movement inside contains several innovations my grandfather developed throughout his career. My grandfather always said the watch would go to the first grandson who pursued a career in engineering, as he believed engineering was the modern evolution of his craft. I studied mechanical engineering, worked hard through college, and even took special courses in watch mechanics to honor his legacy. In my final year of university, I completed a thesis project on the evolution of watchmaking techniques, using my grandfather's methods as a case study. He attended my graduation and told everyone at the celebration dinner that I would be carrying on his legacy. When my grandfather passed away 5 years ago, my entire family acknowledged that the watch should come to me based on his wishes. The problem started when my sister took the watch from our grandfather's belongings before anyone could properly divide his things. She volunteered to help clean out his house while I was dealing with arrangements for the memorial service. When I asked about the watch afterward, she claimed grandfather secretly told her he changed his mind and wanted her to have it because she appreciated beautiful things more and had an eye for artistry that I supposedly lacked. This made no sense given everything he'd said over the years, but I didn't want to cause drama during a time of grief. Last month, I discovered my sister sold the watch to her boyfriend's father, who's some kind of vintage watch collector. She didn't even tell anyone in the family. I only found out because the boyfriend's father posted about his incredible acquisition on a watch collectors forum that I follow. He mentioned getting it from his future daughter-in-law and included photos that clearly showed my grandfather's watch. He described specific technical details about the movement that confirmed it was definitely the one my grandfather made. When I confronted my sister, she shrugged and said, "It was just collecting dust in my drawer. At least someone's appreciating it now." I reminded her that the watch was supposed to stay in our family and represented grandfather's legacy. She replied, "Well, it's done now. Maybe you should have spoken up sooner." I contacted the buyer and explained the situation, but he refused to return it, saying he paid good money and it was a legitimate sale. He suggested I work things out with family and not involve him in our disagreements. I then attempted to negotiate with my sister to at least split the money she received, but she claimed she needed it all for a down payment on an apartment with her boyfriend. When I pressed her about the family significance of the watch, she scoffed and said, "Oh please, it's just a thing. Grandfather is gone and he doesn't care what happens to his stuff anymore." After getting nowhere, I consulted a lawyer who believes I have a strong case based on documented family understanding of my grandfather's wishes. Several family members witnessed him stating his intentions for the watch multiple times over the years. I've now filed a lawsuit against both my sister and the buyer. My sister is telling everyone I'm an asshole who's trying to ruin her life over just a watch. She's posted on social media claiming I'm obsessed with material possessions and trying to block her future happiness. My parents are split. Dad thinks I'm right to fight for my inheritance, while Mom thinks I should let it go to preserve family harmony. She keeps saying, "Your grandfather wouldn't want to see the family torn apart like this." Several cousins and my aunt have messaged to say they remember grandfather's wishes clearly and will testify if needed. Ida for taking this to court rather than accepting it's gone? Additional information. For those asking why I didn't push harder initially, I was dealing with my own grief and didn't want to create more tension in the family. I genuinely thought my sister would treat the watch with respect even if she somehow convinced herself it should be hers. Finding out she sold it feels like she's erased part of our family history and grandfather's legacy for quick cash. The watch isn't just about monetary value, it represents the culmination of my grandfather's career and was meant to stay in our family for generations. My grandfather spent 3 years designing and crafting that watch, often working late into the night perfecting every component. He considered it his masterpiece. Update 1. February 20th, 2025. Thanks to everyone who commented on my original post. The situation has developed in ways I didn't expect, so I wanted to provide an update. After filing the lawsuit, I uncovered more details about what happened. My sister didn't just take the watch, she convinced our uncle, who was helping organize grandfather's belongings, that grandfather had changed his wishes. Uncle Mark revealed this when I contacted him about possibly testifying. He apologized profusely, explaining my sister had told him grandfather pulled her aside during his final hospital stay and expressed concerns that I wouldn't appreciate the artistry of the watch and was only interested in the mechanical aspects. She apparently told Uncle Mark that grandfather worried I would dismantle the watch to study its mechanism or store it away rather than display and appreciate it properly. Uncle Mark, who doesn't know much about watches himself, Found this convincing enough to override years of hearing grandfather's actual wishes. This conversation supposedly happened when I was getting coffee in the hospital cafeteria. No one else witnessed it. Uncle Mark handed over the watch without questioning further because he wanted to respect what he thought were grandfather's final wishes. When I asked him why he never mentioned this to me, he admitted he thought it might hurt my feelings and assumed my sister would at least keep the watch in the family. I've gathered statements from 3 other family members who clearly recall grandfather's original intention for the watch to go to the grandson who pursued engineering. My cousin, who visited grandfather frequently in his final months, confirmed grandfather mentioned the watch going to me just 2 weeks before he passed. He even recalled grandfather showing him a small notebook where he documented the watch's creation process, saying he was saving it for me to study after he was gone. That notebook was also missing from his belongings after my sister went through them. The lawsuit is proceeding, though it's costing more than I anticipated. I've already spent $3,800 on legal fees, and my lawyer expects the total could reach $12,000 if this goes to trial. The watch is appraised at approximately $45,000 due to its unique design and my grandfather's minor fame in watchmaking circles. Some collectors have suggested it could be worth even more given its provenance and the documented creation process. My sister has escalated her campaign against me. She posted photos of the watch on social media with the caption, "Remember that family heirloom my brother's suing over? Looks much better on its new owner than collecting dust in some engineer's drawer." Her boyfriend commented, "Some people just can't stand seeing others happy." One of her friends suggested I was jealous of her relationship and trying to sabotage her future. I've blocked most of these people to avoid seeing their comments, but mutual family members keep sending me screenshots. When confronted at a family dinner last week, my sister stormed out after shouting that I've always been jealous of her relationship and I'm trying to sabotage her down payment plans out of spite. She claimed I never really cared about the watch until I found out she sold it, which is completely untrue. I asked about it multiple times after grandfather passed. Our mother followed her out, while Dad and I sat in uncomfortable silence for 20 minutes before he suggested we get dessert. Later that evening, Dad told me he supports my position but wishes there was a way to resolve this without courts. He revealed my sister has struggled financially for the past year after losing her job during company downsizing, but she's been too proud to tell the family. This doesn't excuse selling the watch, but it adds context to her desperation for funds. My first court date is set for March 17th. I'll update again after that. Despite the cost and family tension, I remain committed to recovering my grandfather's legacy. If the watch can't be returned, I at least want recognition that it was wrongfully taken and sold, plus some form of compensation that acknowledges its true value, both monetary and sentimental. Additional info, regarding questions about why I'm throwing away money on legal fees, this isn't about the money. The watch represents my connection to my grandfather and the traditions he wanted to establish in our family. If I back down now, I'm essentially agreeing that family wishes mean nothing when someone decides to cash in for personal gain. The amount I'm spending might seem disproportionate to those focused solely on financial calculations, but some things are worth fighting for regardless of cost. Update 2, March 22, 2025 court proceedings have begun, and things have gotten messier than I anticipated. The first hearing was on March 17th, and though no final decision was reached, several important developments occurred. My uncle testified about how my sister convinced him to give her the watch, admitting he now believes he was manipulated. He brought emails from shortly after grandfather's death where I specifically asked about the watch, contradicting my sister's claim that I never showed interest in it. 2 of my cousins and my grandfather's former apprentice all testified about hearing grandfather explicitly state his intentions for the watch multiple times over the years. The apprentice, now a successful watchmaker himself, explained the technical significance of the piece and why grandfather would have wanted it to go to someone who understood its mechanical innovations. The buyer, my sister's boyfriend's father, showed up with an attorney who argued that he purchased the item in good faith and shouldn't be punished for family disagreements he wasn't privy to. His lawyer presented screenshots of text messages between my sister and the buyer discussing the sale, which revealed something incredibly frustrating. My sister told him about the family history of the watch and grandfather's wishes regarding me, but claimed I didn't want it anymore because I had moved on to digital watches. This is completely false. I wear mechanical watches exclusively out of respect for my grandfather's craft, including one he repaired for me when I was in college. The buyer's attorney argued that even if my sister obtained the watch improperly, his client was an innocent third party who had no reason to question her right to sell it. My lawyer countered that the texts show he was aware of potential complications with the sale but proceeded anyway. The judge seemed concerned about this point and requested additional documentation about what the buyer knew and when. My sister's testimony was full of inconsistencies. She first claimed grandfather changed his mind on his deathbed, then later said he had expressed doubts about me receiving the watch for years. When pressed for specific instances or witnesses to these conversations, she couldn't provide any beyond private conversations. She became defensive when questioned about the notebook documenting the watch's creation, first denying knowledge of it, then suggesting it might have been thrown out during house cleaning, then finally admitting she might have misplaced it during her review of grandfather's belongings. The most shocking moment came when the financial details emerged. The buyer didn't pay $45,000 as the watch is worth. He paid $17,500, which means my sister sold a family heirloom for less than 40% of its appraised value. When this came to light, my sister broke down and admitted she needed the money quickly for a deposit on an apartment she and her boyfriend wanted before someone else bought it. She claimed she researched watch values online but was confused by different pricing models and thought she was getting a fair deal. The buyer testified that he knew the watch was worth more but considered $17,500 fair because my sister approached him urgently needing cash. He admitted he would have paid more if pushed but didn't volunteer this information to her. When asked if he considered the ethical implications of buying a family heirloom at a steep discount from someone clearly in financial distress, he replied that business is business and people make their own decisions. Legal fees have now reached $7,200. My savings account is taking a serious hit, but the judge seems sympathetic to my case, particularly after the text messages revealed my sister had misrepresented the situation to the buyer. My lawyer believes this strengthens our position considerably. Outside the courtroom, my mother finally broke her silence. Instead of supporting either side, she berated both of us for destroying the family over material possessions. She then revealed she's been having health issues that she's kept secret because everyone's too busy fighting over a damn watch to notice she's been going to doctor's appointments alone. This bombshell left everyone stunned, and my father immediately left with her without speaking to either me or my sister. I tried calling both parents later that evening but got no answer. My cousin later informed me that mom has been experiencing concerning symptoms for months and finally got tests that revealed abnormalities requiring further investigation. She's scheduled for additional procedures next week. The fact that she kept this from everyone while we've been focused on the lawsuit has made me question my priorities, though I still believe in the principle behind my case. The next court date is set for April 8th. The judge has encouraged us to reach a settlement before then, suggesting the most equitable solution might be for the buyer to return the watch in exchange for a refund from my sister. Since my sister has already spent most of the money, this creates yet another complication. My lawyer suggested I might need to provide the refund myself to facilitate the watch's return, then pursue reimbursement for my sister over time, essentially buying back what should have been mine in the first place. I came into this wanting justice, but now everything feels tangled in a bigger mess than I ever anticipated. Still, I can't bring myself to back down when we're this far into the process. Additional info, to address comments suggesting I should prioritize my mother's health over the lawsuit. Of course her health is more important. I've reached out to both my parents since the revelation, offering to drive my mother to appointments and help however I can. Dad has responded with brief texts saying they need space. This situation isn't as simple as choosing between family health and a possession, both are happening simultaneously, and dropping the lawsuit now wouldn't magically fix the other issues that have surfaced. In fact, without a formal resolution, the watch situation would likely continue causing tension indefinitely. Update 3, April 12, 2025. The court case has taken unexpected turns, so I wanted to provide another update. The scheduled April 8 hearing happened, but with developments no one saw coming. 3 days before the hearing, my sister's boyfriend's father, the watch buyer, reached out through his lawyer proposing a settlement. He offered to return the watch if my sister refunded his money. Since she spent most of it, he suggested a payment plan where she'd pay back $500 monthly until the debt was cleared. He also requested a formal acknowledgement that he wasn't aware of the disputed ownership when he purchased it. Apparently he's concerned about his reputation in collector circles. This seemed like a reasonable solution, so my lawyer and I agreed to the terms pending my sister's approval. On the morning of the hearing, my sister didn't show up. Her lawyer arrived looking flustered, explaining he couldn't reach her and had been trying her phone since the previous evening. The judge was clearly annoyed and gave her a 48-hour window to appear before considering a default judgment. Her lawyer admitted off the record that he hadn't been fully paid for his services and seemed reluctant to continue representing her interests without communication. Later that evening, I received a call from my sister's boyfriend. He explained that my sister had packed some belongings and left their apartment 3 days ago after a major argument about the watch situation. Apparently, he had suggested she should accept the settlement offer, which led to a heated exchange about loyalty and support. He hadn't heard from her since, except for a text saying she needed space to figure things out. He sounded genuinely concerned and even apologized for his father's role in the mess, admitting he had initially encouraged the purchase because it seemed like a good business opportunity. My parents got involved at this point, filing a missing person report after confirming none of her friends had seen her. For 2 tense days, the lawsuit became secondary to finding my sister. Dad organized family members to check locations she frequented, while Mom stayed home in case she called. The strain of the situation clearly worsened Mom's health, and I noticed her hands shaking when I stopped by to check on them. Yesterday morning, my aunt called to say my sister had shown up at her house in a neighboring state. She'd apparently been staying at a motel, trying to clear her head. According to my aunt, my sister spent most of the first day crying and revealed she felt trapped between impossible choices. My aunt convinced her to call our parents, who drove 4 hours to bring her home. They arrived back late last night, and Dad texted saying they all needed to rest before discussing anything further. Today, my sister finally contacted me directly. The conversation wasn't what I expected. She admitted to lying about grandfather changing his wishes and confessed she sold the watch because she and her boyfriend were in financial trouble after making some poor investment decisions involving cryptocurrency. They had lost nearly $30,000 of their savings on what turned out to be a scam, and were too embarrassed to admit this to anyone. She said she'd agree to the settlement offer and would work extra shifts at her job to make the repayments. What struck me most was her explanation for running away. She said she couldn't face everyone after her lies were exposed in court, and she felt trapped between her boyfriend's pressure to fight the case and her own growing realization that she'd made a terrible mistake. She also admitted that seeing Mom's health deteriorate because of the family conflict made her feel overwhelmed with guilt. She spent those days away considering whether to leave town permanently or try to make amends. I told her I was relieved she was safe and that while I was still hurt by her actions, I was open to finding a path forward. We agreed to meet with our lawyers tomorrow to formalize the settlement agreement. She also mentioned she believes she still has grandfather's notebook about the watch somewhere in storage and promised to search for it this weekend. The judge has approved our settlement agreement. The watch buyer will return the heirloom to me next week, and my sister will begin monthly payments to him. I've agreed to drop all other claims, including legal fees. While this means I'm covering the significant costs myself, ending the legal battle feels worth it at this point. As for my mother, I've learned she is non-cancerous but concerning growths that require monitoring. Dad assured me her health situation isn't directly life-threatening but needs attention. The stress of family conflict definitely hasn't helped her condition. I've apologized to both of them for not being more aware of what was happening and have committed to helping with her care going forward. Additional info, to those asking if I feel victorious, this doesn't feel like a victory. Getting the watch back matters to me, but the cost has been far higher than just legal fees. I'm realizing that my sister's actions came from a place of financial desperation she was too proud to admit, and while that doesn't excuse what she did, it helps me understand it better. We've all made mistakes throughout this process, and now we have to decide whether family relationships are worth rebuilding. I believe they are. Update 4, May 30th, 2025. It's been more than a month since my last update, and I wanted to share how things have progressed since the settlement. The watch was returned to me as agreed. The handover happened at my lawyer's office, with both my sister and the buyer present. When I finally held it again, I noticed several small scratches on the case that weren't there before, and the crown had a slight wobble that suggested improper handling. The buyer explained that he had taken it to a jeweler for cleaning, and apparently, the person wasn't experienced with antique timepieces. He seemed genuinely apologetic about the damage. I took it to a specialist watchmaker who was able to restore it to its original condition, though at a cost of $850. My sister has made 2 payments to the buyer so far. She's taken a second job working weekends at a local cafe to meet her financial obligations. The arrangement seems to be working, though she mentioned it will take nearly 3 years to complete the payments at the current rate. Her boyfriend initially moved out after their fight but returned 2 weeks later. According to my father, they're still together but have postponed any talk of engagement or apartments. They've moved into a smaller rental to reduce expenses and are gradually rebuilding their savings. My sister also found and returned grandfather's notebook documenting the watch's creation. It was mixed in with old college textbooks in her storage unit. The notebook contains detailed sketches, technical specifications, and journal entries spanning the 3 years he worked on the piece. We've had 3 family counseling sessions. Progress has been slow and awkward. During the first session, we mostly established ground rules for communication. By the second session, my sister revealed she's harbored resentment toward me since childhood because she felt our grandfather favored me due to my interest in engineering. She admitted that taking the watch was partly motivated by a desire to finally be the important one in the family narrative. She described feeling invisible next to my achievements and the special bond I shared with grandfather. This revelation hit me hard. I had never considered how my relationship with our grandfather might have appeared from her perspective. While it doesn't justify selling a family heirloom, it provided context I hadn't previously understood. In the third session, I acknowledged that I probably talked too much about my projects with grandfather without recognizing how that might have made her feel excluded. We've begun discussing ways to honor different types of family connections rather than comparing them. My mother's health has stabilized. The medication the doctors prescribed seems to be working, and her recent tests showed improvement. She started joining my father and me for lunch every Sunday, slowly rebuilding our regular family routines. Additional info, for those asking about legal costs in the end, the final tally came to just over $9,000. It was a significant financial burden, but I don't regret fighting for what was right.